Welcome to Hora, New Zealand. New Zealand's ties with Fiji go back many decades. Trade between the two countries in 2018 was as much as $1.17 billion. And because of historical ties, significant numbers of Fijians, both of Indian and indigenous descent, reside in New Zealand. Fiji is also the most favorite Pacific Island holiday destination for Kiwis. The two countries' importance to each other can't be overstated. But with travel restrictions during COVID-19 and the travel bubble looking increasingly distant, this vibrant relationship is suffering greatly at all levels, particularly in trade and investment. Join me today in my conversation with Peter Rudd, who is Manager Trade and Investment and leads the New Zealand team for the Fiji Trade Commission, which is based in Auckland. The Fiji Trade Commission is a Fijian government-funded agency that works with businesses and government agencies to promote trade and investment opportunities to help advance, diversify, and develop the Fiji economy. Peter has 20 years' experience working across both private and public sectors for New Zealand and international organizations, including founding and executive leadership for a number of successful companies. He also serves on the executive committee with the New Zealand Fiji Business Council. Hi, Peter. Welcome to Kia Hora, New Zealand.
Good afternoon, Dev. Nice to be here.
Good to have you on the program. Now, Peter, tell me, let's start with what is it that your office does in New Zealand to promote trade and investment in Fiji?
Yeah, so I head up the Fiji Trade Commission to New Zealand. We were established from the Fijian government about 2.5 years ago now. We have a small team here in the Auckland office, and we're measured and performed against key performance indicators. So we're sort of focused on trade and investment between Fiji and New Zealand. We have a sister office in Sydney, and there are other Fiji Trade Commission offices in North America and China. But our office was really established to promote investment, quality, sustainable investment into Fiji from New Zealand. So lift exports out of Fiji into the New Zealand market. So we work with a range of companies, small, large, whether it's Fletcher's or Fulton Hogan, with a construction infrastructure project in Fiji, or we might be working with a small agriculture or farm in Fiji that's trying to export their pineapples or some of their product into the New Zealand market.
How has COVID-19 affected trade and investment in Fiji, particularly exports to New Zealand from Fiji and investments from New Zealand into Fiji, which is what your office really facilitates? So how has COVID-19 affected that activity?
It's certainly been a challenge, as with everyone, has had to sort of adjust to this new way of working, hence lots of Zoom meetings. In terms of investment, things have been quite quiet. We have clients that are sitting on the margins and that are wanting to move and facilitate and undertake investment projects up in Fiji and the wider Pacific. Some of those projects are continuing because they have teams up on location that can manage that. Others need to wait probably until we can allow borders to open safely before they can start those projects. So a lot of our work has been focused primarily on the export market, which has been quite strong. We've actually seen a good level of exports coming out of Fiji into New Zealand for this quarter and during the pandemic, which is a testament to the resilience of the Fijian economy. So we're seeing, for example, a New Zealand company, Douglas Pharmaceuticals, have an operation manufacturing facility in Nandi, and they've had a huge lift in sales through February, March, April. And they are producing things like hand sanitizer, which, as we know, is in high demand. Those products are being manufactured out of Fiji, sent down to New Zealand for global distribution from their main headquarters here in Henderson. So we are seeing opportunity. Also, agricultural core sort of products, taro, ginger, turmeric, are still seeing strong growth in yield. And we'd like to see more of that. There have been certainly challenges though in terms of supply chain, logistics, freight, significant costs involved, particularly with air freight for commodities out of here. That has impacted and reduced margins or profit and revenue earnings for those Fijian companies.
What are some of the measures the Fiji government has taken to keep trade flows going, during these past few months?
Yeah, the Fijian government has actually been very proactive on a number of fronts, both in terms of managing the health, potential risks from COVID and shutting down, instituting curfews, for example, and isolating cases, testing of cases or potential cases. And they have also undertaken a number of measures to ease the burden for companies. There are loan schemes in place. And they've been assisting, as I mentioned earlier, the supply chain and freight logistics has been a critical point. So they're making sure that pathways are open. So Fiji Airways, for example, is connecting with Auckland on a weekly basis, and also Sydney and Los Angeles, to allow that freight to continue. And luckily Air New Zealand are actually also flying weekly between Auckland and Nandi as well, which helps facilitate that trade. So the government is aware. I mean, it is challenging times, and they are doing their best part to try and lift and help businesses during this challenging period. Notwithstanding that, it has certainly impacted on the economy, like all economies at the moment, and particularly out of Fiji, the tourism sector is vulnerable and to this pandemic, and so therefore a lot of resorts, hotels, are either not open or have been gone into hiding until as and when borders can reopen. But we are seeing some proactive measures in terms of the Bulla bubble, which was recently announced by the Prime Minister, which would, I guess, look to a pathway for potentially people travelling to Fiji to undertake holiday or business. Currently, there is still quarantine in place, so you have to allow for those quarantine measures.
But do you think it's going to be a reality? Yes, it all began with a great deal of optimism that yes, it's going to open. Everything is coming down. There's level 1, but then again, there's a surge in infections in Victoria in positive cases, and suddenly yes, that idea has gone into a tailspin, and it looks increasingly difficult that it's going to open. What are your comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a challenging one for sure. And it's unfortunate what's happening, obviously, in Victoria at the moment, where other parts of Australia are doing very well. Queensland, Western Australia, South Australia, even New South Wales seem to have quite a good grasp. And the Australian government have certainly instigated some good measures. Their testing is they're doing a lot of testing, which is good. But it does present a challenge, and I guess Fiji is sort of positioning itself for the recovery, where at some point the borders will open, and we will be able to travel. And I guess the Bulla bubble is one way to create a initial pathway for that. It won't suit everyone, but if and when that is available, then some people, I think, will take the opportunity.
Are businesses complaining? Are you receiving any complaints from businesses saying it's really beginning to affect business? Because Fiji and in the Pacific as a whole, there is no replacing face-to-face contact. I mean, Zoom is the next best thing, but it's really face-to-face contact and person-to-person contact, which really does business traditionally. So how's that being affected, and how's that being addressed?
Yeah, Dev, we're getting daily, if not hourly, lobbying from our clients, customers that really do want to see a pathway so they can travel. And you're right, a lot of business needs to be undertaken face to face, whether it's an engineering company or something, and they need to send a team into Fiji to undertake their bridging project, roading project, what have you. And it is a two-way street. A lot of Fijians also travel down to New Zealand to conduct business and have businesses in both countries. There's a large diaspora of Fijians in Auckland, for example, and around the country, but particularly Auckland. And these people often, in normal conditions, would be traveling between Fiji and New Zealand on a regular basis, 2 weeks here, 2 weeks there, to facilitate business. So it'd be great, and everyone's asking when can we travel, when can we get up there, and it would be great to see some sort of business bubble. It's something I discussed with Newsroom in an article the other week, and maybe there could be some potential there. But at the end of the day, we have to also be very mindful of the health implications or potential implications of opening travel. And we have to be conscious of that and be mindful of that throughout the process. But look, I think if the right protocols in place, then there's certainly, we'd like to see an opportunity for a business bubble or some sort of limited travel bubble to occur for businesses. Because it is vital, a lot of this work is critical infrastructure, bridges, roads, resort development, a whole myriad of different areas, which is currently on pause due to the limitations on travel.
Going forward, do you think the Fiji government, once these things open up, and COVID is not going to go on forever, so at some stage it'll open up to attract more investment and to get more exports, more business going? Do you expect the Fiji government to announce new facilities or new concessions for people who want to come in and invest?
Absolutely. I think that we will see some change there, and that's the one, I guess, if there's a positive out of this whole thing, is that people are reviewing business as normal, because business is anything but normal at the moment. And we've had to pivot and sort of look at new ways of doing things, and Fiji will be no exception to that. And we've got some, people on the ground there that are looking into how we can sort of adjust to this new way of working going forward. In terms of Fiji going forward, I think in the medium term is a big opportunity, and we saw this early on when China, was in the beginning of the year when things were starting to blow up there. In terms of manufacturing, a lot of New Zealand companies set up or partnered with manufacturers out of China. And there is a view now that maybe they should, that outsourcing should be brought more nearshore. Fiji provides a great alternative. They actually have capability in terms of manufacturing, call centers, back office processing. So there is a fairly deep, sector knowledge there that can be harnessed, which could give security to New Zealand companies and allow them to diversify, but also a cost advantage and a security advantage, and being, it's a 3-hour flight away. It's easy to conduct business. We're on the same time zone as New Zealand, but frankly, a better climate. It's a nice place to do business.
Yep. Do you have a crystal ball to predict when this is likely to open up again?
I'd certainly like to see something this year in terms of that, in some capacity, if possible. Of course, it's very hard to know. Things are, on one hand, moving slowly, in other areas are moving quite fast. So it's very hard to crystal ball and speculate when that may be an opening. And there's obviously a lot of talk around the Trans-Tasman first. And yeah, obviously Australia is presenting with some issues and challenges at the moment that they need to navigate. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And of course, the last thing we would want is for New Zealand to export coronavirus into the Pacific. So the New Zealand government are obviously acutely aware of that. So we have to be careful. But notwithstanding that, we have to be very careful of the economic impact keeping the border shut. So the economic devastation for the Pacific economies, you know, whether it's tourism or what have you, we can't really underestimate that. So, and you know, people are losing their jobs, their livelihoods. At some point, we'll have to move on, and we should be looking north to the Pacific to assist. This is probably the one opportunity in time where New Zealand and ultimately down the track Australia can really lift the Pacific and that Vivali, or that step up, which the governments have announced in terms of assisting the Pacific and our nearshore partners.
What's the role businesses can play in this?
In terms of opening the border, or?
No, in terms of getting back on track, getting Fiji's economy back on track. How can New Zealand businesses help?
Well, I think New Zealand businesses need to be aware of the opportunities in the Pacific, which sometimes they maybe not. They're looking to larger markets sometimes, and they have to remember that actually the Pacific does represent a market, and there are opportunities there for companies to get involved, and these are developing economies that need investments and have opportunities for trade. And I think there's a huge opportunity there for New Zealand businesses to trade and invest. And that's currently, you know, we're sort of only touching the surface of that. So there are a multitude of opportunities going forward. Areas like agriculture, for example, in Fiji has huge opportunity to commercialize and lift their operations for an export market. You can grow amazing produce in the Pacific in these tropical climates, and it's getting the supply chain and practices in place so that you can scale up and export those.
Your office has been planning trade missions into Fiji and also road shows here in New Zealand. Now, the trade missions are not going to happen in a hurry. What about road shows? Are you planning to go ahead with those?
We are. We've just announced new dates for late August. I think it's the 31st of August. We're heading to Taranaki, and then the first week of September we'll be going to Auckland, Wellington, Christchurch. So these are trade and investment events to basically showcase and shine a spotlight on in terms of some of the opportunities that we're seeing in the region, and that's designed to get to both a new and an old audience, really. So we ran the first inaugural sort of events last year, and we were, you know, we just saw the amount of interest was really significant. I think we had double the numbers we were expecting and forecasting. So there's definitely interest out there. And as I say, it is a developing economy out there. There are numerous opportunities for Kiwi companies to get involved.
Well, thank you very much for your time, Peter.
You're welcome. A pleasure. Anytime.